When I speak to MSPs who've been running their own business for 5, 10 years or more, and they're still doing all the sales in the business, you can understand that one of their goals is to get out of the sales and hire someone else to do it for them. The thing is, when you come to do this, you are going to make a series of very predictable mistakes. My special guest today is going to tell you what those mistakes are, how you can avoid them, and how you can hire the right first salesperson for your MSP who's going to make your life easier and generate you more revenue.
Hi, my name is Robert Gillette. I'm co-founder of the MSP Growth OS. I'm the head of content these days.
And it is so cool to have you back on the podcast, Robert. Thank you so much for joining us again. You've been on the show before, and that was under a different business name. You were MSP Dojo back then, and I want to know so much about the MSP Growth OS. We're going to talk about that towards the end of the interview. You and I were hanging out just a couple of months ago at ScaleCon 25 in New Orleans. Actually, we were on like a big paddle boat thing, which was the VIP night, and we were sat batting away the insects from the Mississippi River, and we were talking about MSPs hiring their first salesperson. And that's why we've got you back on the show today, because that's a massive, massive subject. So before we talk about that and all the mistakes that MSPs make when they go and hire their first salesperson, let's just first of all find out a little bit about you. So tell us, who is Robert Gillette?
Yeah, I'm just a dumb sales guy, who sold a bunch of revenue for an MSP and then decided that was too much work. And so I now coach MSPs and, help them figure out how to get their own growth, because sales is really hard for MSPs for very complex reasons.
Oh, it is, and I think that's a recurring theme on this podcast. Is we've been going we've just celebrated 6 years, and it's crazy how difficult MSPs find sales. They find it difficult doing their own sales. They find it difficult hiring other people to do their sales, and that's what. Let's focus in on that aspect, because I think the last time you were on, and we'll find the episode number, that was where you were talking about doing your own sales, I believe. Yeah. In terms of hiring a salesperson, what's the trigger that makes an MSP think, right, it's time for me to go and find someone to do this? Is it because they're sick of doing it themselves, or is it because they think someone else is going to do a better job or ramp up the activity, or is it all of those things?
I think it's all of those things, but probably the most common one is people that they just hate it. They don't want to do it. It's really hard. It's super discouraging. It's just incredibly difficult. The activity, the rejection, everything about it is almost the exact opposite of what a traditional IT professional might want to do with their life. And so people start this MSP, and then it grows for a little bit, and they get some referrals, and then that comes the point where they're like, we need more revenue. And then they got to go do sales. And pretty quickly they're like, I hate this. And so they oftentimes want to hire a salesperson just to abdicate the responsibility to someone else. And that shows up as hiring a salesperson or a marketing company or a cold calling company or someone, or it's just like, make this your problem and not mine, and I'll give you money. And that way, if it doesn't work, I can blame you and try with someone else. And that's probably the most common reason why people outsource this function.
So I completely agree with you there. And actually, I think what compounds that and makes it even more of a problem is, first of all, when MSPs do hire a sales resource, they actually throw all of marketing and sales at it. So they're like, oh, great, a salesperson. So you can create some audiences, you can do some content, you can generate some leads, you can warm those leads up, you can close those leads, you can account manage them, you can do all of these things. And the other compounding factor that also makes it difficult is the MSP who only does 2 sales meetings a month takes on a full-time person and has no other plan to increase the number of sales meetings. What other mistakes do you see apart from those?
Oh, yeah. First of all, 2 meetings a month would be a miracle for some MSPs I talk to. They're lucky if they get 10 a year. But I think the other big problem is that they don't give them any kind of a process or plan to follow. They hire these people that have been really successful in other industries in sales, hopefully. And then what happens is they step into this job and they're like, okay, well, whose example am I following? And they can't really follow the owner because they've never been successful in that role. And so they oftentimes are just shooting in the dark at what may or may not work. And then again, when they're not successful, the MSP owner has someone to blame that's not themselves.
Can I suggest something possibly controversial, and you can agree or disagree with me on
please.
this? You and I have spoken to enough MSPs who, even though they don't do more than, let's say, 10 sales meetings a year, they will close 6 of those or 7 of those. And so almost every MSP I've spoken to where the owner does the sales, they'll say to me, if I can get in front of someone, I close Loads. I close,
Yeah,
3 out of 4,
90% or
nearly
better.
4 out of 4. 90%
Yeah.
or better. And someone said to me a few years ago, and it was on this podcast, I can't remember who it was, but it was another sales expert. There are other sales experts out there, Robert. And they said to me, the reason that they have such a great close rate is because they're not doing enough sales meetings. So they're literally getting the most basic number of sales meetings, and they're only meeting with people who are ready to buy. Whereas they should be doing 50, 60, 70 of those meetings and getting a 50% close rate. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. I think the snarky way I frame it is, it's like telling me, oh, yeah, every time someone puts a fully cooked steak on my table, oh, I can eat it. I'm so good. I cut it up, eat it. Well, that's great. That's kind of, congratulations, you didn't choke on it. That's kind of expected. The challenge is what happens when you need to go find people that don't even know they're ready to work with you yet. They haven't done all the hard work of identifying the problems, exploring different options, reaching out to their network to find providers that somehow referred and ended up right on your table. When you have to go do all that other work, that's what we're asking usually a salesperson to go do, is identify companies and create some kind of urgency or need, and then start the conversation, bring them right to your table so you can sign them. And that's just going to be a lot harder than sitting around and waiting for someone else to do all that hard work, whether it be your prospect or a referral partner or a current client or something like that.
Yeah, I completely agree. So, all right, you and I have done a pretty effective job of just taking everyone down and making them feel terrible. So let's lift them back up. So, sorry about that. What would you do? So, and obviously this is what you do. You help MSPs do exactly this and to get their sales right. But what would you do? So you're an MSP owner, you're sick to death of sales, you don't do enough sales activity, and you're ready for someone else to do it. What would you recommend?
Yeah, absolutely. First, you got to make sure, can I afford to do this? This is a big one because most people hire a salesperson as like their option of last resort. They hire a salesperson and they go, God, I really hope this works out, because if they don't, I'm out of money. And then what happens is the salesperson's performance is judged off of cash flow and not off of what's a reasonable expectation for their job. And so that's the first thing I figure out, can I even afford to do this? And then the second thing is, once I hire this person, how am I going to, for lack of a better term, make it good to work here? There's an old quote that says people don't quit bad jobs, they quit bad managers. And so one of the key distinctions is understanding, once you hire your first salesperson, you've hired someone who's probably unlike anyone else at your MSP. Your MSP was started by you as the first employee, and you have a culture, you have a love of technology and a way you think and act and the way you're motivated. And then because of that charismatic individual, you've gathered people like you under you. And so you all kind of feel and think and want to work the same way. And then you hire the salesperson who is, by their very definition, very different than you. They want different things. They think different ways. They need different tools. They need to be motivated differently. And so how are you as a manager, because congratulations, you're now also a sales manager. You don't just have a salesperson. How are you as a sales manager going to create the kind of culture where they're going to thrive and give them the kind of tools they need, including mentorship, to be good at this thing that you're barely good at yourself? So that's the next piece that's very difficult that I would encourage people. If you can answer those two questions, how can you pay for it? And then how are you going to make it good? You're well on your way to success in this area.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I'm sure you and I would agree, because I'm recalling our conversation of a couple of months ago on the paddle steamer, that the vast majority of MSPs, when faced with those two questions, go, oh, do you know what? You're right. Let's not do this. I'm not going to do it. And they get, as the owner, you get trapped in the business continuing to do the thing you don't enjoy. But of course, the quality of that comes down. Anytime you're doing something that you've done for 10 years and you don't want to do anymore, you're not going to do a great job of it. So it's 2026, like a couple of weeks away, and this is our last regular episode of the year. If let's say that someone's listening to this over Christmas, watching this on YouTube, and they're just going to hit January, ready to go. It's like, right, I'm going to answer those questions, Robert. I'm going to do this. What are the steps? What are the steps that you would recommend to get started?
Yeah, at first I wouldn't make that decision on your own. I would find somebody who has done this before and has actual repeatable success in this area that can tell you whether or not you're right to the answer to those two questions. And this is so funny to me. How many times, even myself, maybe this is a uniquely American problem, I don't know, but we all want to be the first to do a thing. We all just want to be the first guy to invent that product or that process or the thing. We want to be unique in some way. And I don't know why that is. I'm not going to try ever figure that out in my life, probably. But my encouragement would be, you're not the first person to approach this problem, and you're most certainly not the first person that will be successful at it. Find someone who's done the exact thing you want to do, and then ask them if your plan is a good one. Because this is the other kind of weird truth about this. There isn't only one good way to grow your MSP. When you're under 5 million, there's like 3 or 5 really great, successful, proven ways to grow your MSP to 5 million. From maybe 5 to 10 or 20, 30, 50, 100, there's fewer ways, but there are still very plausible paths that have been run before by people that are successful that would be happy to share with you whether or not your plan is going to work based on their experience. So I'd be like, just don't make decisions on it. You don't have to reinvent this. Find somebody who can help you figure it out.
Yeah, I love this. And it's a really nice segue, actually, into what you do, because obviously you've had a big transformation in your working life over the last year. So you were the MSP Dojo, which was famously the only place where you could go to actually practice sales. And I still think it's an amazing concept. And you were the first to do that. So talking about someone who wonders why people are first, you were the first to do that, both in the channel and I think, in any sector that I was aware of, certainly. But now you're obviously, you've evolved that. You've moved that on. Tell us about MSP Growth OS. So what is that, and how do you help MSPs with these exact problems?
Yeah, so businesses that are kind of approaching that 5 million or above that 5 million, we help them figure out their particular revenue generation model. How do they want to grow to whatever business level they want? And this is really hard. There's this gap, this black hole around 6 or 8 million that'll just suck MSPs in, and that's where all their money goes, and then they just fall back to 5, and it's very hard to grow past that. There's also similar ones at around 18 and around 36. And so the challenge is that I now have partnered with a guy who actually taught me how to do this as a sales professional, who organically grew his MSP from 1 to, I think, 143 million. We have coaches now on our team that have grown their MSP to 60 million and 163 million respectively. So we have people that can help MSP owners figure out their journey through the forest as they grow to whatever revenue they're really looking for. And we can help them set reasonable timeframes and expectations and what they can expect at an organizational level as they try and build that new revenue engine. That's all we focus on. It's just new revenue. If you got service delivery problems, you go talk to somebody else. But this is really, we're just trying to help them figure out how to get the new client revenue and spin up an engine to provide that kind of growth they're looking for. We do that through recruiting, peer groups, training, and then one-on-one coaching. So just trying everything that we would need to help them find the right people to help them grow their business, and then kind of, I don't want to say manage them because we don't always do that, but it's mostly coaching and then some kind of accountability groups and knowledge base and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I have to say, with those kind of big numbers of the coaches that you work with, the size of the MSPs that they grew to, you shouldn't have called it MSP Growth OS. You should have called it the MSP Overachievers Club. That's
maybe.
Anyway.
Well, it's a little longer of a URL, but that's fine.
That's true. Yeah, stick with MSP Growth OS. Robert, thank you so much for being on the show. Let's get you back on again next year. Let's not leave it till you and I are sat at ScaleCon 26, which is inevitably bound to happen. We're bound to sit at some VIP event and sit and have a similar conversation. But for now, let's just tell us, how can we get in touch with you? So what is that website address? And how do we find you on LinkedIn?
Yeah. First of all, thank you for having me. It's an honor. MSPgrowthOS.com, or you can look me up on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to respond to you there. But either way, I'd love to talk to you. Even if you're not at those sizes, we love helping MSPs hit the revenue growth that they're looking for, because for us, it's the one thing we know how to do, and we just love helping people with that. So thank you so much.
Paul Green's MSP Marketing Edge.